Okay, we are back for video number 2 of 2 for the Haitian Revolution. I just want to say, even though this is only my second video, I'm already crushing it on YouTube. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to talk a little bit faster this time because I went way too long-winded last time. Now, things get a little bit complicated here, but this is meant to be a support for the reading and video watching that you'll be doing. You can always come back to this, give you the big overview picture here. You can, as I say, you can refer back to this or just watch the slides alone without me. All right. Let's start with this guy, Vincent Auger, who in 1791, he is a jeune de couleur. He is going to travel to France. Again, look at the way he's dressed. Looks basically French. And the jeune de couleur, as I mentioned in video 1, essentially aspire to be that identity, to distinguish themselves from the blacks or slaves in Saint-Domingue. So he was prosperous on the plantation. He's going to go to Paris in 1789, right at the start of the French Revolution, and petition a group of planters, these maritime bourgeoisie, to say, hey, you should grant us our full political rights because we are like you. And the Grand Blanc offer a resounding no way. So then he goes to the National Assembly itself. This is the revolutionary body leading the revolution to petition them for an end of slavery. Mind you, they are in the midst of a revolution that is clamoring for rights and individual freedom and liberty, and they say no. Well, he's not too pleased with that, so he's going to return back to Saint Domingue and form a group of rebels. But on his way back, he's going to stop in in Britain, contact some abolitionists there, make his way to the States, load up on weapons, and haul those weapons back to Saint Domingue. He's not going to get too far, and eventually he's actually killed on what's called the breaking wheel, a severe form of torture that many other slaves endured. If you look at that picture, this historical document, this is not necessarily Vincent Auger's death, but the death of another slave who's put on this wheel that essentially stretched and broke their bones while they were beaten in a large public humiliation. It was not really unlike those lynchings that took place in the late 19th or let's say the 19th century here in the United States. People actually made postcards of those events. So a horrifying uh, aspect of racism in our history here. All right, here's where things get a little bit more complicated. So now we go into the real legitimate first phase of the Haitian Revolution. And that's going to begin with a slave insurrection, led initially by this guy, Boukman Duty. And he's going to begin his insurrection with a voodoo ceremony that's going to lead to the slaughter of thousands and the destruction of, just dollars and dollars worth of property and commodity crops. Um, I mentioned voodoo because it's a significant part of the story. This is a blended religion, a blended spiritual practice, both of the different slave communities who came together forcibly in Haiti, as well as drawing on Christianity or Catholicism. It's going to serve as an identity for this new, it's going to serve as a cultural, a coming together for this new identity of slaves and people fighting for their freedom in a new land with, again, a blend of religious and cultural and language traditions. So it'll serve both as a religious and spiritual identity as well as a cultural and political identity, and it's going to bind them together in this violent action that they begin. Um, that will make some progress, but eventually along comes this guy, Toussaint Louverture. Again, look at the way he's dressed, the way he's represented. He himself is a former slave, and now he is really a member of the Jeune de Couleur. He rents land with slaves on it. He's becomes highly educated, incredibly literate, a great orator and writer, and one of the leading figures of 18th and early 19th century fights for freedom. His goal, here's where you got to pay close attention. His goal is not to create an independent republic. I mentioned this in the first video. His goal is to create a black, self-governing French territory. He sees himself and aspires to be part of the French Empire. He enjoys their refinements and their cultural traditions. He is sympathetic to Catholicism. So he's not looking to break away as a completely independent. He wants to be a member of the great nations, but this territory to be run by former slaves. He's also regarded as one of the great and brilliant military leaders of modern history. All right, so um, did I skip a slide perhaps? No, I didn't. Okay. By the way, I'm using the old slide advancer, remote slide advancer, and you might wonder, why am I doing that when I'm sitting literally 30 uh, inches away from the screen, of which I'm the only person in the room right now? I don't know. All right. Anyway, so the French Revolution really will be in alignment in Haiti. It'll be an alignment of the Grand Blanc and Petit Blanc, who really see themselves as part of the third estate. So the revolution now is not just in France; it's now being felt across all French territories. Spain is going to get into the game here because France and Spain fought over this island of Hispaniola. France is in a vulnerable position, and so Spain sees this as an opportunity to take over the western third, Saint Domingue. And Toussaint's going to join with the Spanish because they are trying to defeat the French slave masters. And so Toussaint becomes one of the most important leaders of the Spanish invasion from the Dominican Republic into Haiti. In fact, he'll actually capture several cities there. Back in France, they're debating slavery, whether or not it's consistent with the ideals of the French Revolution, although it certainly pulls in a lot of profit. But finally, in 1794, the French revolutionary government decides to abolish slavery in its colonies, and that's going to gain Toussaint's support. He switches sides now, and he takes the French side to fight against the Spanish. All right, it gets a little bit more complicated. The British are then going to invade France and Britain, historic enemies. France had declared war on Britain back in continental Europe. And so Britain sees this as a legitimate part of the fight and tries to capture Saint Domingue and re-enslave all the slaves and make it part of their own slave empire. But now Toussaint, who'd already defeated the Spanish, goes and leads an army in Saint Domingue to defeat the British. You have this former slave now having defeated two of the most powerful empires in the world. Many Grand Blanc slave owners will support the British in this struggle. All right, Toussaint then eventually negotiates the surrender of the British. He offers amnesty to the Grand Blanc, who had supported the British, if they promise to stay and help build the economy. He's not trying to eliminate the French presence on the island. He sees Haiti as part of the French Empire. That's what he imagines. Okay, and by 1801, he is in control. Let me move this out of the way there. He's going to write a constitution that abolishes slavery. But, and this is where he begins to uh, draw the wrath of many of those former slaves who had supported him. He says, we need to go back to you slaves need to go back to those plantations, not as slaves, but as workers. Because if you don't, Haiti's going to be poor and never be able to compete internationally. That's going to upset many of the former slaves who begin to erase or erode some of their support for Toussaint Louverture. Okay, let's go on from here. One more kind of complicated bit of notes here, and the slides are not advancing. Go, come on, there we go. Okay, we didn't really talk about this in class, but eventually towards the latter part of the French Revolution, Napoleon is going to take over and he becomes a dictator. He decides to reimpose slavery in the colonies in 1802. Toussaint is captured. He's exiled to France, where he dies in a prison cell. Not a good end for an incredibly heroic figure. Slave armies then rise up once again, and they defeat the French. And they're led now by one of Toussaint's major deputies, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Dessalines, unlike Toussaint, has no desire to not only be a part of France, but to even have a French person on Haitian soil. He vows to slaughter them, in fact, and pretty much will lead to the beginning of a departure of all French on the territory of Saint Domingue. All right, of the 50,000 French troops who had come to invade to restore French rule and restore slavery, only 3,000 returned. So it was a pretty brutal and violent put down by the Haitian uh, rebels. Okay, and by 1804 now, Saint-Domingue gains its independence. Dessalines renamed Saint-Domingue Haiti, and he writes a new constitution that was different than Toussaint's. Toussaint will make Catholicism the official religion. Dessalines gives people more of a choice and prefers voodoo. Uh, Toussaint wanted to, as I said, really participate in traditional elite French culture. He makes it hard for women, for example, to have rights to a divorce. Dessalines is going to be much more universal in his application of rights. Dessalines bore the mark of slavery. The lashes of the whip were permanently ingrained in his back. He perhaps carried more anger and resentment um, and a sense of revenge that Toussaint wanted. Okay, actually, I'm going to stop right there. Um, you'll see the rest in the handouts and the notes, and I'll check in with you all later.